This is Algebra 1, Lesson 19b, Powers of Negative Numbers. We're going to do examples 19.3 and 19.4. 19.3 says to simplify. First, we're just going to do the exponents. We're going to write them out, what they mean. So I'm going to copy down. I can see here that the base, since there's no parentheses, the base is 3. So I'm going to copy down this negative or opposite in front of it and say that 3 cubed I know is 3 times 3. Then I'm going to copy down this minus sign. So I'll bring it down and then I'll write out what this means. The base here is negative 3, so negative 3 times negative 3. And then I'll copy down this plus sign. And then I'll write out what this means, which is negative 2 times negative 2. Again, the parentheses tell me that the negative is part of the base and will be repeated, okay? Now I can start working this out a little bit. 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, and then you take the opposite of 27, so that's negative 27. I'm going to bring down this minus sign that I have here, okay? And then I have 3 times 3, which is 9, and then those two negatives, so that's going to be a positive 9. Now, I still have the minus in front of it again because I brought that down. Okay, then I'm going to bring down this plus sign here, and then I can work this out. Negative 2 times negative 2, that's going to be positive 4. Okay, and I can think about this as negative 27 plus a negative 9 plus a positive 4. Now I would go ahead and add my negatives together, negative 36. And then I would see that I'm adding things that have different signs, so I would have to subtract them. And I would get 32, and I would take the sign of the one that has the largest absolute value, which would be negative 36. And since it's negative, the final answer will be negative. For 19.4, I would follow that same procedure. Now, if you notice in the book, they start to do a little bit of it in their head, not writing out, like for instance here, 2 times 2. They're just doing the 2 times 2 in their head, and you can do that. If it helps you to write that step out, great. If it doesn't, and you can do that in your head, then that's fine, but I still would show work. Don't take that as, oh, Ms. Hill said I don't have to show work. Yes, you do. It's just a matter of how much work, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and copy down this. Well, actually, no, let's do it here. Let's do all this together. All right, the negative is not part of the base. So it is not negative 2 times negative 2. It is 2 times 2, which is 4, right? And then I'm going to take the opposite of it. So that's negative 4, okay? Then I'm going to copy down this minus 4, and I'm going to go ahead and evaluate what's happening here. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. So I'm going to put a 27 there. But I have an odd exponent. So I have an odd number of negatives. So that means I'm going to have, the answer is going to be negative. Okay? Then I'm going to copy down this minus sign and this 2. And I'm going to go ahead and evaluate this, simplify. Negative 2 squared is, the base is negative 2, so negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And then I'm going to copy this down. Okay, so we made it a little simpler. Now let's go through. I see some multiplications. Do you see where there are things up against parentheses? And I can go ahead and do those multiplications. So let's start with doing this. So I'm going to copy down the negative 4, the minus 4 times 27. 108. So that's minus. That's 4 times a negative 27. So that's going to be a negative 108. Okay. And then I'm going to have a minus. And then I'm going to go ahead and evaluate this. 2 times 4 is 8, and bring down the minus 2. So we're a little simpler. Now I'm going to try to clear up my signs a little bit. This is negative 4 plus the opposite of negative 108, which would be positive 108. And then I can think of these as minuses or negatives. I'm going to go ahead and change them to plus a negative 8 plus a negative 2. The parentheses there are not up against another number or another term, so they're not being multiplied. I just put them in to separate and to show that these are negative, so the negative doesn't get lost. Now I'm going to add up all my negatives, and I have 4 plus 8, which is 12, and then plus that 2, which is 14, so I have that negative, and then I have a positive 108. So I'm going to take the 108 and subtract 14 because their signs are different. 8 minus 4 is 4. This is just 10 minus 1 is 9. So that's going to be equal to 94. And I'm going to keep the sign of the one that has the largest absolute value, which is positive 108. So your final answer is positive 94.